Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Jackson, Vice President of Events at GovExec, and I'm your host for today's webcast, Going Digital, Moving Your Budget from the Page to the Web, sponsored by Euna Solutions and produced by GovExec. For any government, the budget book is probably the most essential document that determines revenue allocation and defines priorities and outcomes, like community development, public safety, infrastructure projects, and public education. A labor-intensive budget workflow full of spreadsheets and folders can hinder progress across departments, overwhelm staff, reduce transparency, and prevent effective planning. Today, in this live program, we'll look at how you can develop a budget book that promotes transparency and accountability, and one that even your citizens will be enthusiastic about. I have three great guides for this program. I'm going to introduce them here to you. It's Debbie Evans. She is Senior Customer Success Manager at Euna Solutions. Debbie, great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Cecilia McCorkle is their budgeting and implementation consultant. Cecilia, good to have you too.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
And our third speaker today with a matching headset is Lana Whitaker. She's Euna's Senior Solutions Engineer. Lana, thanks for being here.
Thanks, George. Happy to be here.
So Lana, don't go anywhere. In a little while, after some initial Q&A, I'd love to get a demo from you. That'll be later in the program. But before we get there, I do want to hear from Cecilia, from Debbie. Audience, as we go along, just a reminder, this is a live program, so please send any questions through in the chat feature here on our web platform. We'll be asking those in a Q&A portion a little later on after that demo from Lana. But Cecilia, kick us off. Tell our audience about your experience, how it involves government finance, and maybe a little bit about budgeting processes and their evolution over the years.
Sure. I'm Cecilia McCorkle, as George told you. My background before I came to Euna Solutions was that I was in the public sector budgeting and finance for over 15 years. And my last role before I came to Euna Solutions, I worked for Pinellas County, Florida, the Board of County Commissioners. And my role was a countywide budget division director. So I was responsible for the team that pulled the budget together. I don't want to say they built the budget because it's collaborative, but pulled the budget together and developed the budget book, which, and you're right, George, very labor intensive and can be quite painful at sometimes. But that was my primary role there. Prior to Pinellas County, I worked with Osceola County, Florida for several years in their budget office and in their public works office doing finance management and public works and grants. So in the time I've been, or I was involved doing the public sector budgeting and finance, a lot of things have changed over the years. Collaboration is a big thing for me, and it was always a struggle, being able to not only collaborate among our budget and finance offices, but also collaborating with other departments in the organization. And it could be quite cumbersome, and not just getting their budget requests. So in some cases, we started off with an Excel sheet and folks would manually add what they want, and we would take that and load it into a budget software, whatever kind we were using, or sometimes it was just pulling those together and rolling up numbers for presentations. Over the years and the better development tools like Questica Budget and all of that, we were able to get out of that, be able to use a budget software and actually have collaboration within that software, even having approval levels so that you could, as a department, enter what your budget is, have it promoted to your manager, have them approve it, and it goes through the cycle. Many times in my history of doing budget, we would have, the departments in the organization submit budget requests quite early in the year and be involved in it for a couple months, and several months of budget development went by and they they really didn't know what was happening with their budgets, until we adopted it. And it was like, surprise, this is what you got. Now that there's such great transparency tools and collaboration tools, even if they're not actually editing their budget over the course of several months, there is that visibility into it. So they could, get email alerts, annotations, anything that can alert them to something's changing. So there's no real surprises at the end of it. So they feel like a part of developing their own budget over time. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I experienced over the course of my career doing the budgeting, was just being able to have that collaboration, not just from our team, but the entire organization.
Love that as a foundation. Debbie, add to it a little bit for me. Who are you? Tell me a little bit about your work.
Yes, so I've for over 32 years, I worked for a municipality, and so I worked in the finance department. I looked after the financial systems, and I was a IT project manager. And so currently, I work for Euna Solutions, as George mentioned. So I specialize in consulting and educating the budget, the Questica budget software. So I've implemented. In my past experience, I've implemented quite a few budgeting software tools. So I've implemented Questica about 12 years ago for a large municipality. So I'm very familiar with the government budgeting and processes and how budget books are created. So having all those years of experience, so the budget process changed drastically all throughout those years. So the beginning, it was, a lot of scribbles on paper. Then we had Excel documents being shared back and forth across the corporation. Then we had an in-house software. Then we had a business warehouse where we tried to create capital data in that. So we've used many systems to capture our operating, our salary, our capital data, any new initiatives, etc. So they're all spread out in different softwares or tools. So then we had purchased Questica budgets. So there it came about as one system, one source of the data. So that has allowed us to keep everything contained in one system. So we went from a centralized budgeting process to a more decentralized process, which allowed more of the departments and divisions to be involved in the budget process. So allowed for collaboration with the departments and the budgeting staff. So during that process, we have to show the public and council how we are financially prudent, right? We had to illustrate how we would fund our capital projects over 10 years. We had to demonstrate how our continuity reporting for reserves and reserve funds, and deciding whether debt is an option or not. So this having the software allowed us to be able to do that. And over time, we found that the public were asking more and more questions of us, of the municipality. So we had to be more transparent, and we had to get the community and the constituents more involved. So again, we had to be more transparent and more accountable. So the budgeting software allowed for that to happen. So yeah, over time, it definitely has changed, and still growing as we in the future of the needs of the constituents and the government.
Some great themes to draw on here. Collaboration, centralized versus decentralized processes. Is debt an option? Transparency being key. Cecilia, I want to use all of this as foundation, but get maybe to some of the challenges right now that you see across the government sector regarding budgeting, and how folks have started to address those through software.
I think one of the biggest challenges in recent years that I can think of is just more scrutiny of the budget, the government budget from the public, and they really want to understand what's in their budget. And quite frankly, if you've ever taken the time to read a budget book, they're not exactly the most enticing books to read. but a lot of citizens want to really understand, and it's really hard to communicate with them or expect or anticipate all of their questions that they're going to have to help them understand. So I think not just being transparency is huge, but also helping to educate them on things that are a little more complicated. You can't expect somebody to be able to open a budget book to a page and always, some people may be well versed in that type of thing, but some people aren't. And how are they getting information from your budget book, or anything that you may have on your website, and having it in a digestible flow of information that makes sense to them, so that they can actually be able to ask questions and articulate them and have educated questions, where they can really understand how their tax dollars are being used. And I think that's quite a bit of a challenge. So the transparency tools are great for trying to bring that in. And I know Lana's going to show us in a little bit a demonstration of the budget book that the budget book studio, and I think that's a great start that builds off of the open book product that Questica Euna Solutions has had for a few years. The budget book studio is new, but it has that same level of transparency of being able to put something out on your website, adding pictures and links and visualizations that you could actually drill into. So if you don't just see a high level budget that I'm showing you by fund or by fund and department, I can actually drill into some pieces a little bit more and see some of what's in there, where are those dollars going, what's going to personnel, what's going to capital. And I think our citizens really want to know that. I think they want to understand it. They don't want to, just try to piece together and bits and pieces from numbers they see in there, and being able to once again, when you see the how the narrative flows in the budget book along with the numbers, and being able to pull that together in a way that speaks to the citizens, I think really helps build that trust with the citizens, and being transparent. And it's a two-way. It feels a little more two-way than it does just putting a book out on a website and that's 800 pages and hoping they get something out of it.
Cecilia, if I could ask a follow-up question there, for the municipalities or the cities or the counties that you work with, when you're speaking to their leadership, do they find generally that being proactive on that dissemination of information, putting stuff up on websites or sharing it out with the community, preempts concerns around their budgets?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's what they're hoping for. I think they want their citizens to be able to get that information, to be able to get responses without even having to ask the question directly, being able to get access to that. I think that most leaders feel like if it's not easily accessible, people may assume that we're intentionally making it inaccessible, so being open, and again, it's tax dollars, it's that people are paying into that, it's fees that they pay for, and understanding how those are being used, and as Debbie said earlier, we're trying to be as financially prudent as that we can, and we're willing to show you that. And then if you have questions from this level of transparency, then by all means ask them, and then that helps inform future publications that you may have. You may understand that people need yet another level, but I find that most leaders would want that. They do want that. They want their citizens to be well informed about what's going on with their budget.
Debbie, I'm going to ask you to put your IT project management 3 decades of experience here to use for me. We mentioned some of the benefits here, and I'm paraphrasing Cecilia, but answering more educated questions in a granular way, faster, pulling that information out, turning it into pictures and visualization and links. But Debbie, what we're ultimately talking about is, benefits of cloud-based budgeting, right? What goes into that?
So, yeah, definitely. So cloud-based budgeting is a software you want to have one source of the truth. We don't want to be updating multiple spreadsheets across the corporation and not knowing what's most up to date, what has been changed. Having one source of the truth is best. So Now the companies have a lot of people working from home or anywhere for that matter, as we've noticed over the past few years. That's definitely drastically changed. So having that cloud-based budgeting software is you can work on that software anywhere. So having the cloud-based budgeting is more efficient and more effective for everybody, and having the more decentralized software makes working on a budget more collaborative. As we spoke earlier, you can have directors and managers able to go in and review the budgeting process as you're going through your budget cycle. They can jump in and take a look how it's going and comment and mark notifications and follow-up questions, and they can review it as the budget process is moving along. So the cloud-based budgeting, it's easy security setup. So I know that a lot of municipalities or governments are worried about the security. So it's easy security setup, allows for different stages and statuses during the budget cycle. It gives users access to approve and edit, and you can have some there just display only, etc. So the security is very important, I know, for government. Having the cloud base is refreshing data is fast and efficient. You can do that on if you have to reset your software back to a specific date or time, it's done quite quickly. So for the disaster recovery backups is there for you. Quicker upgrades as well, very little dependencies on the IT department. This is their software is based a lot on the finance department. So the IT department does not need to be involved as much as they used to be. So that's a huge benefit as well. So definitely the cloud base is definitely more efficient and effective.
One word, Debbie, that hasn't come up yet, but I would imagine is critical for all of these municipal or city or county leaders, and that's accuracy. What type of impact does software systems like these based in the cloud for budgeting, what kind of impact is it having on accuracy for people?
Definitely accuracy is important. And again, having that cloud-based software, having the one system, the information is in one place, can be reviewed, can be analyzed. And so transparency is key in today's world. As more constituents are asking more questions, and the different levels of government want to review and make sure that they are being transparent, that the data can be reviewed. So it's fundamental in the integrity of all the levels of government. So the budgeting software allows for reviewing and approving budget through promoting. So there's promoting functionality in the software for your operating and your capital budgets. So they can promote to make sure it's been reviewed. They promote it on to the next stage and into the next levels of seniority to ensure that the data is accurate and what they're going to be publishing is the right information. So the budgeting software allows for accountability by gathering the budget data in one place. And then they have the ability to, or the obligation to explain their decisions and their actions to their citizens. So they can go in, they can look at the budgets, they can explain why the budget is the way it is or what they need it for. And so definitely, yeah, the constituents they're asking questions, and different levels of government are being more, need to be more transparent.
Sorry, folks, like I said, live webcast. I was having trouble finding my mute button there. My guests today, Cecilia McCorkle and Debbie Evans, joined later by Lana Whitaker, are all from Euna Solutions. We're having a great and robust conversation today about going digital, moving your budget from the page to the web. Cecilia, I'd love to switch gears just a little bit and focus on the transparency aspect that both you and your colleague have teased out thus far in the conversation. Like, how do transparent budget solutions facilitate the collaboration, the communication among different departments, different stakeholders? You mentioned collaboration is one of your real passion areas. How does that work in practice?
And I'll build off of what I said a little bit earlier. So as Debbie was mentioning, some of these cloud solutions. So with the Questica budget, which is what we actually implemented when I was in Pinellas County, it was a great opportunity to showcase that. So we had previously talking about working in multiple platforms. Prior to having Questica, we did some things in SharePoint. So obviously we could allow people access to if we wanted to, but that didn't mean everybody could have access to it. And it was, we did like, you know, a decision package type of thing in SharePoint. We had spreadsheets, which were just tons of data. And, you know, Debbie spoke a few minutes ago about accuracy. With Excel, when we were reusing spreadsheets over and over and over year to year, or some part of that is always manual. And we really made some big boo-boos along the way. We had a couple of embarrassing incidents with Excel sheets, you know, just, you know, because a link didn't get updated or a column didn't get updated with the right amounts. And so we were building budgets in Excel. We were trying to load them into our actual budget software, which was no easy feat. And these are all things that were happening out of the purview of the departments who, you know, they might send you a budget in Excel, but they didn't actually see anything after that. And like I said earlier, sometimes we're good at communicating. Sometimes it's hard to communicate every change. When we moved over to Questica, which is a cloud-based solution, we were able to open it wide open to whomever we wished. If we wanted departments, whoever they wanted to enter their budgets, their directors could be part of it. I could have my county administrator have access if he wanted to come in and view like a smart dashboard report. So if you wanted some visuals, so we could create all kinds of tools. That was just within the Questica budget. So they're building their budgets, and they're, like Debbie said, we could promote to different stages, so people have access to, you know, directors can approve it, they can promote it, they can continue to have visibility through all of that. We also had the open book platform, which was built off of, you know, directly connected to Questica budget. So anything that you were putting in Questica, you could publish out directly to open book. And that was actually a public facing interactive, like a graph. You could drill down into your pie chart and see what's building that up. And that's something that we loved using. And again, this is what the budget book is really built off of. But all of that was connected. So it was transparent, not just for the internal users, but actually for external stakeholders or citizens. Our Board of County Commissioners could go in there. They could also direct citizens to that. So if there were questions that they received from citizens, they could actually direct them to that so that they got more familiar. You think of a capital program, a CIP program, which is quite often something that citizens are very interested in, because those are the big things that they actually see that come out of their budgets. And being able to, you know, just have visuals out there for them to not only just see the numbers, but to see the progress, see everything that's going on with that. Really having that ability to see what the status of a project may be right there out on the website, that's up to date, with budget information, actuals information, anything that was within the Questica budget system. We could pull that out and allow that visibility, and our board could see it. You could also have internal views, so maybe you don't need everything to go out to the public, but you could have internal views for open book, so that perhaps departments each had, you know, a few views that they wanted to see. And they're really kind of financial infographics, so that they can see what's happening, where their budgets and actuals. Because again, even departments, you know, you have some directors and departments, they're well versed in their budget, but they're not in the day-to-day details of the budgets and the actuals. So they could still go out there and take a quick look at something, and without having to have someone do a specific analysis, they had that visibility whenever they wanted it.
I would imagine, Cecilia, that the way that all that information is packaged needs to be as easy as possible. You know, I have a hard time even managing my own budget. I can only imagine what it looks like dealing with, you know, a municipality or somebody as big as a county. Like, do you have any best practices around pressing that easy button via software-based budgeting solutions?
Well, in the case that we had some integration. So we had our actuals actually integrated within our budget system. So we had our budget, we kept our budget updated, obviously within our budget software. We had an actuals integration that we nightly pulled in our actuals. So it reflected within a few hours of what was actually in our financial system. So keeping that updated, even though it wasn't, our budget solution was not our system of record for financials, but it was pulling directly from the system of record of financials. So we could actually build additional reports, like I said, smart reports, and those are kind of like just like dashboards with, again, graphics within budget, Questica budget. But when that information is coming in and being regularly updated and your budgets are being regularly updated, being able to, and we call it publish. So essentially it's pushing a button and saying, open book update with whatever's in Questica today or whenever, or you could have it scheduled, you do it on a timer, but however you want to do that, it's up to date. And it's actually good real-time information. You're not trying to load in things manually. It's automated. So obviously you can't just step aside and never make sure that your integrations are running appropriately. There is a little bit of an effort to make sure you're watching for error emails. But aside from that, once it's set up, it's scheduled, and those things can happen for you. And it takes a lot of the manual efforts. It takes a lot of the room for error out of the flow of information.
That's great. Cecilia, I'm going to stay with you for a moment because I want to talk about something called GFOA Distinguished Award. What does that stand for? What's your experience with it?
Well, the GFOA is the Government Finance Officers Association, and a lot of financial folks from municipalities are familiar with it. They actually publish, aside from the award, the organization itself publishes a lot of best practices, good advice for any finance or budget professionals, just staying up with what's good for transparency, what's best practices, as I mentioned. The Distinguished Award or Budget Award is based on your budget book. So what it is you submit the budget book. There are certain criteria GFOA publishes out, so you know ahead of time what you're aiming for. The idea is to produce transparent documents in kind of a consistent format. So it's not, everybody does things a little bit differently, but the information is intended to be out there in a manner which is, like I said earlier, digestible to your citizens. So there is a list of criteria. They publish them every year. They sometimes change, they tweak them a little bit. Occasionally they'll add something new as a requirement. You meet all those criteria. And then you receive this Distinguished Budget Award. So it's something that a lot of organizations really strive for, to have this Distinguished Budget Award. And when we talked earlier about how painful developing a budget book is, that's not even the hardest part. When you're finished, you have I think it's 90 days to submit for the award. So you have to fill out an application, and you have to go back after you thought you were done with your budget book and go back and say, this is where I met this criteria on this page, and maybe this page, and this is how it achieves that criteria. And then they do the review. You get it, hopefully you get the award, and they provide feedback on how you can do it better. So what we always did was review when we received the feedback. Before we developed our next year budget book, we really tried to understand what the feedback was. What could we do a little bit better? Some things were like, you did this really well, and we're like, yay, that's great. But there were a lot of things that they would have, maybe you could do this better. And so we would try to incorporate that before we actually started building our budget book, so that we weren't scurrying or missing anything later. With the Budget Book Studio product that we were talking about today, there is a built-in criteria checklist which is great because you can see as you're reviewing the book, as you're building the book, what those criteria are, so you don't accidentally forget something that's required. You don't have to try to navigate your book 2.5 months later and figure out where was it we discussed X, Y, and Z. So as you go along as a reviewer or an editor, you're able to, basically tag those pages and fill out. And I'm sure Lana's going to show us this a little bit later, so I'm not going to try to tell you exactly what it looks like. But that ability is in there, and I find that it's a great thing because doing that after the fact was always so painful for us. Just really trying to go back. It wasn't always the person who knew the most about the budget book trying to pull that application together. So if I were at the role I was in previously, I could actually, as I'm going through and I'm reviewing the book, which was my part of my job before, I could, this is what I want, add this, add this, add this for these criteria. And it makes it so much easier for whoever's doing that work later. And you submit what you really wanted to submit and make sure that everything's packaged up nicely.
Well, Debbie, I gave Cecilia a chance to answer this, but I think I should definitely pivot it to you as well. As we're talking about distinguished budget awards, are there case studies that stick out in your mind, cloud benefits to the communities that you serve?
Yeah, so definitely communities are getting more and more involved in the budget. They're asking a lot more questions. They're coming back to the governments, and they want to, the governments have to be transparent, as we mentioned earlier. So it's important. It's important for the governments to be able to have the ability to give the information out to the constituents, so they'll have they can be transparent and see what is going on in their communities, how are they spending their money. So what we have with Euna Solutions is something called an open book software, as Cecilia had mentioned earlier. So that is a transparency and data visualization software. So it allows you to put into that software and send it out to onto the web, and then users can go in and take a look at that information. So the software enables constituents to view the budget. They can drill down to departments and divisions within the government and municipality to see what is it they're spending the money on. So the software helps build transparency and trust by communicating that data visually. So the software includes interactive graphs and charts and maps, and it helps present data to make it easier for them to read and understand what that data is. Instead of just having numbers thrown at them, it kind of helps them, or they can be interactive and drill down into some of those numbers. So within this open book, there's something called spotlights. So that allows you to combine data visualizations with engaging article style presentations in there as well. You can add narratives to help explain the story behind the complex data. So it helps engage the citizens and improves that user experience of going on and looking at that data. And also, as Lana's going to be showing us soon, we have a Questica budgeting solution, and that allows for the creation of the budget book, as Cecilia was mentioning as well. So the data is all captured in one place, and then allows for ease of creating the budget book. So the completion of the budget book is published out to the web for the communities to be able to review and be engaged in that budget process. So what usually municipalities or governments will do is they will publish a preliminary budget out onto the web, and then the constituents can go in and take a look, and they can comment, or they can attend the public budget meetings before the budget's approved. So this will allow them to be able to go in, take a look at the budget, what they're proposing. They can look through it, they can go to the meetings and ask questions at that time. And then this will allow for the governments to review their questions, and they can make changes before that budget's actually approved. So it gets the communities involved as well. So the communities have a say in the budget process, which makes them feel that they're important too. Then they can have a say in where their tax dollars are going. So Alan will be getting more into that budget book. So definitely having this software the open book and the budget book and just the budgeting software allows for the communities to become, in the end result, is getting the communities more involved in where their tax dollars are going to be spent.
Debbie, you teed me up for what is my favorite part of this program, the amount of time where I can just kick my feet up, let Lana Whitaker take the wheel here. She's Euna's Senior Solutions Engineer. She's going to give us a brief overview of something called Budget Book Studio Solution. Lana, take it away, ma'am.
Thank you, George. So welcome to Budget Book Studio. We mentioned previously it is powered by Questica's Open Book, and it uses all of the latest web technology to help you create award-winning digital budget books. It does have a very easy to use editor, and it integrates tightly with Questica Budget. So you're able to do push button updates to synchronize your budget information. And this actually does provide quite an advantage over traditional desktop publishing tools. You no longer have to spend hours editing pages, keeping your data up to date. There are many advantages to transitioning to a web-based book over a printed book. Users are unlikely to engage with hundreds of pages of budget book information. So the modern web really does allow for more engaging ways to present your budget data and provides opportunity for citizens to easily learn about your budget. Now, I mentioned a little bit about accessibility. That should be top of mind, and you really need to ask yourself if your public data is accessible to all users in the same way. So this platform ensures your content will meet WCAG AA accessibility standards. So let's dive right in and look at Budget Book Studio in a little bit more detail. Each book comes with a configurable table of contents where you can add, remove sections, you can copy pages, and there is a workflow built in. So you'll notice that I do have indicators here. I've got some yellow and green dots here, and this is showing me the progress of my workflow. Green being pages that have been completed, yellow's in progress. No color means that this section has not yet entered the approval workflow for review. When designing pages in the editor, you do have a drag and drop interface where you can choose from a variety of content types. So things like imagery, video can be dropped in. Any of the visualizations that have been built out within OpenBook could be dropped in as well to allow for a drill down capability. We can also build out your organization charts as well. So that way, if you wanted to showcase the organization hierarchy of your city, you'd be able to drop those into your book very easily, and they can tie into your social media as well. Now, one key area that can be something that is a little tricky to maintain from year to year is even things like what the budget year is, your current budget year. With our books, you're able to create copies from year to year of a previous book. And if you have to use something like find and replace in Word to replace wherever you've referenced 2023 and next year change it to 2024, that can become kind of a headache. So with our global variables tool, you're able to assign variables that within just one place you can update, and it will have a ripple effect update across your entire book. Now, we do have the accessibility checkers built right in, so anywhere within the platform I'm not adhering to accessibility standards, I'm going to be alerted. And of course, all of that budget information, all the work that you've put into creating your budget within our budgeting platform could be pulled over, inclusive of narrative and the budget numbers. You don't want to have to be rekeying in that information. You don't want to have to copy and paste. We can do a push button update to grab that information directly from the budget platform. This task doesn't have to be something that just falls on one user's shoulder. You can have multiple users within the platform. You can assign users to pages as well. And there are 3 different types of users. You can have contributors that can add content to the book. That content can then be pushed on to reviewers who can approve pages for publication. And then finally, editors, they're the ones that have superpowers and can make the book go live for all users. Now, earlier we mentioned that you are able to have a little bit of assistance with submitting your book to the GFOA for the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. We do have all the criteria built in. We keep up to date with that criteria. So as you're building out the book, you could actually tag which areas of the book adhere to which criteria. You could enter in your comments. And when you're ready to publish your book, make it live, a criteria guide could be created alongside your budget book submission. So just a little sneak peek at what the final book would look like. It is web-based, so we are digital first. It functions much like a website, inclusive of being mobile friendly. So this is what it would look like on a mobile device, and all of the features like your table of contents would all remain intact here as well. So that was a brief overview of the Budget Book Studio platform. We certainly welcome any questions that we might have in terms of, if you want to learn a little bit more about this tool.
Lana, thank you. Excellent presentation. 5 minutes flat, folks. That's a professional delivery there. I have a few questions. We're getting a few from the audience. Reminder, this is a live program, so fire those to us. You have a great opportunity to talk to 3 budget pros that wear slightly different hats for the Euna Solutions organization. Lana, I'm going to ask my first question to you, and it was on users. Like, can you create differently visible information for different users? I think I remember Cecilia earlier in the program saying, like, the public information that's shared with citizens or shared with constituents, like, you can kind of limit how much they see of that. Can you do the same thing internally to teams?
Sure. So it's kind of twofold. Open Book is our transparency tool. And within that platform, you can create specific visualizations or dashboards for internal use only. You can lock it down behind a password. You can also make some of your budget book documents private as well, so that you require username and password. And it is unlimited users in terms of who can get into the platform. So you don't have to worry about like a user count in that sense. You just need a username and password to be able to view that information. And we actually have many of our clients who are using our open book portion as an internal only tool. So we have some that it's mixed, some things that they show to the public, some that they show to internal users, internal stakeholders, and then some that are strictly using it as an internal tool because it is really, really user friendly. And not everybody likes to stare at a spreadsheet.
Do they spend a lot of time doing so on their mobile devices? Lana, you mentioned the mobility aspect. Like, I would imagine in the past, people be at a desk interacting with a PC. Are they doing a lot more on mobile devices these days?
We're finding more and more, especially with councils or boards, they're liking to just bring their iPad or their tablet with them, want to pull up the information quickly. So we're really seeing that there's a big transition to more of that mobile device as opposed to a printed piece of paper.
Cecilia, I want to draw us back to the very beginning of our conversation. You mentioned in your opening remarks that submitting budget requests was a thing that used to have to happen or does happen earlier in the year. And it raised in my mind a question about speed. With this tectonic shift from paper and spreadsheets into something that's much more integrated, what kind of or what different facets of speed have changed about the budgeting process?
Well, that's a really good question. Well, we a lot of times what we built into our schedule as far as departments submitting their budget requests, some of it wasn't the speed of the software so much as just the level of review we went through the organization, presentations, things like that. So I would say that in some of these cases, these tools that you're saying today could actually alleviate some of the prep time for the presentation. So where we were taking things, creating another format. So we would take something out of a budget software or Excel or somewhere else, put it in a Word document, make something that was easier to put on our agenda or PowerPoint. A lot of the tools here are actually very nice to actually use for presentations. So you saw that visualization Lana showed us a couple of minutes ago. Being able to have that with some discussion with that, I think would be very helpful. It'd probably take some of the prep time out of that. I don't know that you would cut down weeks or months in the beginning of the process or early in the process. And the budget book, on the other hand, that was something we always had to do so quickly because of all those months and the levels of review and the presentations, we would spend weeks and weeks presenting the budget, preparing it, refining it based on decisions. And those decisions by our executive level, our board members, whoever had wanted to contribute at that time, and I'm talking about just really getting to our preliminary budget, those went right down to crunch time. And it was, every year we were in a panic. We had 6 months to prepare the budget and a week and a half to produce our book, which was quite stressful, as manual as the book was, with Word documents, Excel documents, configuring how we're going to do certain pages, doing the review, which the collaboration here alone, I think solves a lot of that problem. Being able to, and a lot of our review, just to backtrack, was to make sure our numbers tied with what was currently in our budget software. And then when we'd see something, our analysis around the wrong numbers, we'd have to go correct that. Because of this tool and everything being tied together, it's a lot easier to get those numbers accurate within your budget book. You don't have to worry about making that last minute change. If you make a change, you're where you make that change, you publish that out and you adjust from there. The variables are very helpful with that, as a matter of fact. But I can't say that I think you take months or anything off of your process, at least early on. But I think as we're refining these tools and making them more seamless and having things that do speak to each other, I think eventually it really could cut down weeks out of a budget process as people get more comfortable with the tools.
Great ones through the chat here for us. Debbie, I'm going to toss this to you, but you may tell me that it's more appropriate for Lana. So if that's the case, just direct it her way. Recruitment is something that I was curious about as I was listening to some of your earlier remarks, being able to do this from anywhere, in essence, because it's based up in the cloud. From the communities that you serve, has there been any conversation about the impact on their workforce, being able to recruit more talented people from other parts of the country rather than kind of being rooted in an office for 8 hours, 5 days a week?
Definitely. That's a big something now that you can hire from anywhere, if anywhere in your country or even go outside of your country. And definitely that would be a definite bonus for people, and you can hire these users that have that background that you need. So definitely it is a benefit for the governments or the municipalities to be able to do that now that it's cloud-based. Even if the users aren't, even if they're going on vacation, if they're going through like the budget book here that's being displayed and they have to go through and review it, they could be, if they're out of office or they're looking after their sick family member, they can still go in here and sign on and, yep, I can review this. I can approve this while I'm out of the office, or I'm getting onto a plane, or whatever you're doing. That is the benefit of having the cloud base. You can go on, they can jump on, like Alana said, onto their iPad, their phone, go through and approve, review it and approve. And it makes it so much faster. And there's no holdups, waiting for this approvals to be made, or any entries or reviews. Not like it used to be in the olden days where you had to be in the office looking at those spreadsheets, gathering the data together. This way it's more collaborative, and definitely on the cloud makes it beneficial to be able to do it anywhere and anytime, for sure.
And just to add on to Debbie's comments, we're finding that a lot of our users are able to do really quick tasks. Although we say, you should work while you're on vacation, but if there's really something that just needs to be reviewed quickly and someone's up at their cottage for the week, they can just hop on, do the review, approve, and everybody can carry on with business as usual. It kind of makes the process a little bit more streamlined. And we are finding too with, the demographics that are coming into the workforce right now, there's a certain level of expectation in terms of tools that are available to them to do their jobs. And we have found even that with our open book transparency tool, some organizations have hired interns to help them build out their initial visualizations, because these are really keen users who are up to date on the latest technology, and they love being able to get in and use some of these tools. So as the workforce is changing, I think that we're going to see more of an expectation that tools like this would be in place.
I really loved, Lana, that when you said nobody likes to work on their vacation, me, Cecilia, and Debbie all laughed simultaneously. Cecilia, I'm going to pose this next question to you. You mentioned something earlier called a built-in criteria checklist. Can you give us just a little bit more of a deep dive there and let me know some of the criteria or elements that are contained in that?
I think Lana might be better to demonstrate that, because that was she went over it quickly. But you can see here there are several criteria, and I want to say 20, but I don't know. I can't say that's right off the top of my head. But as you can see, you see the number 1, the number 2, the number 3 on this screen. Those are the actual criteria that GFOA is looking for in their Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. And like Lana said, we update those. We make sure we're staying on top of those being the most current, because they can change at certain times of the year. So I'm not sorry, year over year, not certain times of the year necessarily. But within this is built in. So as Lana was going through the document, let's just say she's a reviewer, she can actually click on the page she's on and then hit the button that says this page, and that tags that page as meeting that particular criteria. And the first one is very simple. It's a table of contents. The second, you have something that looks for let's see, all these are table of contents related, but you'll have something that wants to see your department budgets or your fund budgets, certain types of roll-ups, strategic plan, strategic goals, your performance measures. So as you're walking through reviewing or building your document, all you have to do is click a button on this checklist to the side. And if you want to just remind yourself of what it is, you think you're almost there with maybe something that you're adding to your budget book, it gives you the exact verbiage there so that you can say, oh, no, I need to make 1 or 2 little adjustments here to feel more comfortable that I'm really hitting that criterion, and then be able to tack that in that page and move on. And you can type something out if you want at that time saying this is how it meets the criteria, but at least you know which pages that you're building to suit those requirements.
Thank you for that. Folks, I'll note we're getting close here to the top of the hour, and budget professionals live on a timeline. So I'm not going to go past that. It's going to be our last question here. Debbie, this may be for you, but feel free to punt it over to Cecilia if you feel it's more appropriate for her side of the house. But I'm informed by covering the White House each year, public sector uses a lot of paper. I think everybody has seen video of the White House's massive blue budget books that they put out every year. That's a lot of paper. Has there been any discussion internally or with the communities, the cities, the municipalities, the counties that you serve about sustainability in this conversation? Are they pointing out that they are trying to move more toward a sustainable future via the cloud, via software, via budgeting in those spaces?
Most definitely, yes. So I know quite a few of the municipalities that I've been speaking with is they do want to get rid of the paper, and a lot of them are getting rid of paper. Everything is online, which is another benefit of having the cloud-based software. Everything is now online, so they don't want to be printing out those budgets. And actually, I was speaking to an old coworker of mine, and she's the one who produces the budget book, and she used to go around with a cart every year when they printed out those budget books that were enormous, and she would have to go around with a cart and drop it off at all of the departments, the department heads, and the counselors. And now she's saying they're using it online, or there's a few of the counselors that still want a hard copy, and I think that's going to be the case for some people. They still want to have a hard copy, but the majority is going to be they're just going to be going on online and reviewing it. So it saved her a lot of time, a lot of paper, by having it online and only having to print a few of them. As Lynn, I believe she said that the budget book isn't online. It's online, but you can print it to PDF if necessary. So that capability is there, but definitely I think that's what government is going to be heading towards, is paperless. And I think definitely that's the way to go.
Well, thank you, Debbie, Cecilia, Lana. I really appreciate your time today. Great information.
Great. Have a good day, all.
Having us.
Thank you.
That wraps up today's program, Going Digital, moving your budget from the page to the web. Audience, really appreciate you tuning in. Keep your eyes peeled for an email with a link to the on-demand version of this program. A special thanks today to Euna Solutions for making discussions like this one possible. For GovExec, I'm George Jackson. Have a great day.